I had always been a private person, preferring to keep my wealth and personal life under wraps. So when I met Sarah, a charming and seemingly down-to-earth woman, I never imagined she'd be interested in my finances. We hit it off immediately, and soon after, we were married. I thought I had found the perfect partner, someone who genuinely cared for me. But as time passed, I started noticing things that didn't quite add up. Sarah would frequently go out with her friends, often coming back late with no clear explanation of what she'd been up to. I'd find strange messages on her phone, and her once loving gestures began to feel forced. I chalked it up to stress and life's ups and downs, but deep down, something didn't sit right. One day, everything came to a head. I was at a business meeting, finalizing a huge deal that would increase my wealth exponentially. After the meeting, I decided to surprise Sarah by picking up some groceries and a gift on my way home. But when I entered our house, I was greeted by a sight that made my heart sink. There, in our living room, was Sarah with another man, someone I had never seen before. They were laughing, holding hands, and clearly too comfortable with each other. At first, I stood frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. Then, the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. My wife was cheating on me. The man quickly rushed out the door when he saw me, leaving Sarah to face the consequences of her actions. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't seem ashamed or guilty. Instead, she acted almost nonchalant, as if the affair was just another mundane part of life. "I was lonely," she said. "You've been so busy lately with work, and this man, he understands me. He makes me feel special." I couldn't believe my ears. But what happened next stunned me even more. Sarah, without a hint of embarrassment, demanded money from me. "Look," she said, "you've got plenty. I need some for the kids in the house. I don't think it's fair that you're keeping everything to yourself while I'm stuck with these responsibilities." I was taken aback. I had always provided for her, for both of us, but never did I expect this kind of request, especially after what she had just done. I knew I could easily cut her off financially, but something in me wanted to test just how far her greed would go. Instead of immediately giving her what she asked for, I decided to let her stew in her own guilt. "You really think I owe you anything after what I just saw?" I asked, trying to hide the betrayal I felt. Her face flushed with anger, but she quickly softened her tone. "Please, it's for the kids. You don't want them to suffer, do you? Just a little bit to get by." I took a deep breath, processing the betrayal and the audacity in her voice. I thought about what I'd worked for, all the long hours I'd put in, and how this woman had taken it all for granted. No more. I told her I would provide for the children, but on my terms, and I'd make sure she understood just how much her actions had cost her. As I walked away from her, I realized something profound. Money wasn't just about wealth, it was about control. And now, I had it all. The days following the confrontation were a blur of tension and silence. Sarah tried to reach out, sending texts, calling, even showing up at my office. Each time, I remained cold, distant, and resolute. I was no longer interested in the woman I had married. Her betrayal had broken something inside me, and all I could focus on now was making sure I didn't let her manipulate me again. She'd always been materialistic, but now, it seemed, her greed knew no bounds. She began subtly threatening to take me to court for more money, demanding a larger share of the assets we had accumulated over the years. In her eyes, I had wronged her by not being emotionally present. Her affair, in her twisted logic, was a result of my neglect. And while she had never outwardly acknowledged the betrayal for what it truly was, I could see the sense of entitlement in every word she spoke. I decided to consult with my lawyer, not just about the divorce, but also about securing my assets. I wasn't about to let Sarah take what I'd worked so hard for. The lawyer confirmed that with the evidence of the affair, I had more than enough grounds to avoid giving her the windfall she expected. When I informed Sarah that the divorce was final, her reaction was a mixture of shock and fury. She had assumed, with her usual entitlement, that I would simply hand over whatever she wanted without any real fight. But I had changed. I was no longer the man who blindly provided for her every whim. I had learned the hard way that love wasn't enough to justify being taken advantage of. "I'm not giving you a dime," I told her flatly, after explaining that I would be securing the children's future in a way that would ensure they were well cared for without her constant demands. "If you truly cared for them, you'd find a way to put your own life in order instead of relying on me." The look in her eyes told me everything. For the first time, she seemed to realize she had miscalculated. The affair, her manipulation, her demands. It had all led her to this point, alone, facing the consequences of her actions. A few weeks passed before I had to face Sarah in court. As we sat across from each other, the tension was thick. She kept trying to play the victim, claiming that without the extra financial support, she and the kids would suffer. But every word she spoke only made her look more desperate, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of empowerment in the face of her lies. The court ruled in my favor, and while I was still required to pay for child support, I made sure the arrangement was fair. The financial settlement wasn't nearly as much as she had hoped, and the bitterness in her eyes was evident as she walked away. I could finally breathe. In the aftermath, I took a step back, reflecting on everything that had led me here. I had always placed my trust in the wrong people. Sarah, her friends, and even my own assumptions about relationships. But now, I had clarity. The affair had shown me the importance of setting boundaries, protecting my wealth, and most importantly, taking control of my own life again. The road ahead wasn't without its challenges. Rebuilding trust, especially in relationships, would take time, but I was no longer concerned with impressing anyone. I had learned a harsh but valuable lesson. Wealth might not buy happiness, but it certainly bought freedom. The freedom to make my own choices and never again be swayed by manipulation or deceit. As for Sarah, I knew I'd never hear from her again, not unless it was to beg for more. But I was done with her, done with the games, and done with the lies. The woman I had once loved had shown her true colors, and I was no longer willing to be her financial safety net. The only thing that mattered now was securing my future and ensuring that my children would grow up in a stable, honest environment, away from the toxic mess Sarah had left behind. Months passed, and the dust slowly settled. The initial sting of betrayal had faded, and while I still had moments of bitterness, I was beginning to rebuild. Not just financially, but emotionally. I focused on my work, restructured my business, and even took up hobbies I had long abandoned. I had always been the type to throw myself into my career. But now, with the freedom of being unencumbered by Sarah's demands and deceit, I found a deeper sense of fulfillment in the quieter, more personal aspects of life. Despite all the growth and progress, there were still moments when my past life with Sarah would creep into my thoughts. I would think back to the person I had been when we were first married, naive, trusting, eager to please. But that version of myself no longer existed. I had learned the importance of self-respect and guarding my heart against those who would take advantage of me. One day, out of the blue, I received a message from Sarah. It was brief and to the point. *, we need to talk. I know I messed up, but I need help. The kids are struggling, and I don't know what to do. Can you at least listen? *, I paused for a moment, considering my options. There had been times when I felt sympathy for Sarah, when I thought about the life we had built together and the children we shared. But everything she had done, the way she had betrayed my trust, made me question whether she had ever truly cared about me or if I was just another source of financial support in her eyes. I decided to meet with her, but on my terms. I wasn't going to fall for her manipulation again. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, one where I felt comfortable and where I could maintain control of the situation. When I saw her again, it was a strange feeling. She had changed, or at least, she seemed to have aged in a way that made her appear more worn and defeated. Her once confident demeanor was replaced with a quiet desperation. She didn't seem like the woman I had once adored, and in that moment, I realized just how much I had outgrown her. I'd been doing some thinking, she began, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "I know I messed up more than you'll ever understand. I was selfish. I thought I could get away with it, but now everything is falling apart." I leaned back in my chair, waiting for her to continue. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. She was, after all, the mother of my children. But another part of me was resolute. She had crossed a line that couldn't be erased, and the only way to move forward was for me to keep my distance. "I can't keep going like this," she said, her eyes filled with a mix of frustration and remorse. "I need help. Please, just let me start over. You have the money. You've always had the power." Her words felt like an echo of the woman I had once loved, but they also felt like a reminder of everything I had endured. She wasn't apologizing for the affair, for the way she had used me. She was apologizing because she needed something from me again. "I can help the kids," I said firmly, my voice devoid of any empathy for her plight. "I'll ensure they're provided for. But that's it. I'm done with you, Sarah. The way you treated me, the way you lied and manipulated, it's over. I'm not your financial safety net anymore. I won't allow myself to be used like that again." The silence between us grew thick as she processed my words. She opened her mouth to say something, but I stopped her before she could speak. "You've made your choices," I continued, "and I'm making mine. You don't get to have both, the kids and my money. You'll get what's fair for them. But as for us, it's done." She stared at me, the realization setting in. For the first time, I saw genuine regret in her eyes. But it was too late. I had moved on. I wasn't the same person who had been so eager to please her all those years ago. I wasn't the same person who had overlooked the cracks in our relationship because I wanted to believe in the best of her. When the meeting ended, I walked away without looking back. As I drove home, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The past was truly behind me now. I had finally let go of the last remnants of the woman who had betrayed me, and I could see my future clearly again. I didn't know what the future held, but I was no longer afraid of it. I had learned to protect my heart, to set boundaries, and to never again let someone take advantage of me. My life was mine to shape, and I wasn't going to let anyone, not even Sarah, dictate its direction anymore.